Welcome to the Real Estate Sit Down presented by Double B Homes. My name is Blair Berg, and today I am joined by Jilayna, and we are going to be talking about perspectives of being on a real estate team versus being a solo agent and what might be right for you. So welcome on, Jilayna. First time. Glad to have you on.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so we picked the topic today. We've both been team agents. We've been solo agents, so we have a little bit of perspective to talk about that. So before we get too into that, just your background, what were you doing before real estate?
So I have had a very diverse kind of career history. I would say my background is really rooted more in like process improvement and quality control.
Okay.
I worked for an international information management company.
Okay.
And I helped develop processes for when they were merging other businesses into their business. Mm-hmm. The company had gone out and was kind of buying out all of these little business, one-off mom and pop type businesses that fit within that model. And we had to implement them into the existing system and then basically change the system as technology really exploded in the early 2000s. So I was involved a lot in that. And I've kind of taken that perspective with me into real estate now too.
Yeah, and I think that's huge. I mean, when you're scaling up your real estate business, it's all about your system. So it probably helps a ton in your business.
Yep.
And then schooling. Give us a little background on your schooling and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Minneapolis and metro area.
Okay.
And I was here until I was 18. Then I moved to Michigan for 6 years. And while I was in Michigan, I did some certification programs in like Microsoft Office and quality management.
Okay.
So I really wanted to go the direction of kind of expanding the process improvement career.
Okay.
And that's what I did while I was out there. And then I returned to returned back to Minnesota in 2005. And then I got married and we started a family right away. That wasn't the plan, but I was a stay-at-home mom for a little while. And from there, I transitioned into real estate.
Props to all the parents out there. I don't think I could do what I do if I had like kids. So, and you have quite a bit of kids, don't you?
6 kids, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that would be nuts. I feel like my girlfriend and I, we have a hard enough time like collaborating our schedules. I can't imagine adding 6 more people to the mix. So
I have my experience running my own team.
Basically. Yeah, that's right. You have a small team at home.
Exactly.
So that's great. What made you want to get into real estate?
Well, that story is pretty interesting. Like, I have always had a fascination with real estate. And I think it stems from, I grew up like in extreme poverty. Okay. So when I was young, my mom was a single mother and I have 4 sisters, and we were always in and out of like Section 8 housing and never owned a home.
Okay.
So in my early years, I had moved from place to place just about every year and a different school every year with it. And I remember driving through some of the suburbs and neighborhoods, like I'd go to my aunt and uncle's house or something, and I'd see all these big houses and think, one day I'm going to own that house. There's actually a house off of McAndrews in Apple Valley that I would drive to on the way to my my aunt's house, and that house is still there, and it has a ton of windows in the backyard. Okay. And so I developed this fascination with 3-story houses, like where you had a walkout basement and then 2 stories above it and tons of windows. So that's kind of my thing. Anytime I see a house that has windows, it takes me back to that. But from there, when I was little, you would go into kind of the vestibules between like the entrance to a store and the store. And especially the grocery store always had those racks that had like the free booklets in it where you could take, the internet wasn't a thing back when I was a child, or not like it is now for sure. And so you'd get one of those apartments for rent or houses for sale booklets that were free. And my sisters would love to go in and they'd get their cute little magazines or coloring books if they got something. But I was drawn to those magazines where I could go through and look at floor plans and read about houses. And I really loved architecture at the same time. So fast forward, 25 plus years, and I was selling my first home. And we had picked an agent, and she was out on showings with us. And on one of those showings, she had just said, have you ever thought about doing this? Because you walk through houses the way I walk through houses with clients, and I just think you'd be really good at it. And I said, yeah, actually, I have thought about it a lot. It's just I never had the time to do the classes, or when I had, the money, I didn't have the time, or when I had the time, I didn't have the money. So I never moved forward with it. And she said, well, if you ever want to take it seriously and would consider, coming into real estate, I'd love to have you on my team. And 6 months later, I was on her team.
Nice. Do you still have a relationship with her? Or?
Yeah, I do. She's a dynamite agent too, specializes in the West Metro, and that's how I got my intro to real estate. I actually worked on their team for a little over 3 years.
Okay, great.
Yep.
So I'm guessing, that was your first team. Did you go solo from there?
I did go solo from there.
Okay.
Yep.
How long were you solo?
I was solo for almost the same amount of time, 3 years.
Okay.
And then from there, transitioned back to a team.
Yeah. So how long have you been with Pemberton now?
It was my 1 year anniversary yesterday.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's okay. And it's crazy to me because it seems like you've been with Pemberton for a long time.
I got rooted into the team.
Yeah, you just seem very comfortable with the team aspect that they have going on. So I guess that's a good transition. So obviously there are advantages to both, being solo and being on a team. So I guess we'll kind of just break it down as we go. But I think for me, the biggest advantage has always been the support staff. Something that solo agents, I'm sure, are very familiar with. The paperwork part of the job sucks. So having a transaction coordinator is awesome.
Yeah.
And I think a great advantage of our team is that you have a dedicated transaction coordinator for the most part.
I do love that feature as well, because you're building a relationship with the transaction coordinator. They're essentially an extension of our business and our service to our clients. And when I was a solo agent, I used a transaction coordinator service. And sometimes you just never know who you're going to get. They do things, every time it's just a little bit different. I'm really a relationships-based person. I think that's one of the reasons I was drawn to kind of coming back to a team, as well as being able to have relationships with other agents that I value. And then having those services in place where you're assigned a transaction coordinator to work with. They learn your language very quickly, how you provide service to your client, how you do your paperwork. And I'm big on that process and consistency. So I love having that in place with the team. Yeah,
and because that's one of my big things is I think something that kind of slows my business down, I need to get better at it, is I don't like to let a lot of my processes go because if something happens along the way, like ultimately it's on me. Even if it's not something that I did or it's not my responsibility, it does reflect poorly on me. And my clients don't know that, it was actually this person that did it. So having a transaction coordinator that I can trust, that I can collaborate with is huge, because I do, like when you're talking about transaction coordinator services, when I was solo, I was very reluctant to use them because especially when you have a service, you don't even know that transaction coordinator very well. Right. So it's not like you have a relationship where you can say, hey, moving forward, can we do it this way? Because when you work, again, you might not even have that transaction coordinator, the same one. So yeah, I'm very particular about I want it done right the first time, because I don't like going to my clients and I say, I'm so sorry that this got missed, blah, blah, blah. So having that transaction coordinator you can trust is huge.
I agree with that. I take that back to my experience in the restaurant industry too. If you go out to dinner, everything gets taken out on the server. Yeah. If something's messed up behind the scenes, the bartender didn't make your drink right, or your food order got, done wrong by the kitchen, none of that matters. It all comes back and reflects on the person who served you the food. And we're that front point person in real estate. So I'm very particular with my processes as well. Service is what our reputation is built on. And our businesses, they take off from there. And when those things get done wrong, it can really have a long-term impact on a relationship with the client. And I just want to make sure that the person that I'm partnering with, or persons I'm partnering with, have that same dedication to client service as I do. Yep. And having that dedicated relationship with the transaction coordinator allows me to kind of customize some of those things that I know are critical service points for my clients.
Yeah, because my philosophy is I'm only as good as my reputation says that I am.
Exactly.
So if I have one bad client experience, it's like in any industry, it's very rare someone will say they had a good experience, but if they have a bad one, they'll tell everybody.
Correct.
And so you have to make sure that your clients are having a phenomenal experience, so that hopefully they spread that, because if they do have a bad one, they definitely will.
Exactly.
And I think that's true in any client-facing industry. It's like you do not want a negative experience. And so, and I think our industry already gets a bad enough rap. So, and with the internet nowadays, it's like I take a little bit of offense to when people, talk bad about my profession, just because it doesn't really make sense to me, because it's in my best interest to have my client's best interest in mind, because if I'm out there scamming people, it'll get around and then I won't have business.
And it's so easy to post bad reviews and things now.
Exactly.
And that cycles pretty fast if they wanted to. This one time I made a negative review about a construction company, and within 5 minutes I had a phone call from that company asking me what they had to do to make it right, because that's how quickly those reviews can affect a person's business. Yeah. And you're right, it's not fair for an entire industry to be looked down on. But I take that kind of responsibility on my shoulders of every time. That's why service is so important to me, because I need to stand out as different from this maybe group of people who are more transaction-minded versus service-minded.
Yep. And then just to transition to, other support stuff, your marketing team, I think our marketing team does a really good job of making sure, we have market updates, we have graphics for closings, solds.
Yeah, I work pretty close with that, because personal branding is so important, even when you're on a team. What differentiates you from me, right? Like, we have our own approach to real estate, our own, maybe there's a facet of real estate that we love. And when you work on a team like this, you can still be an individual, but represent a larger brand. And I love that our marketing team supports that. Actually, that was one of the most attractive things to me about coming to Pemberton Homes, was that Parker wanted to work with strong agents that he could count on to deliver good service, because his brand is associated with it. But at the same time was so flexible about, we want your talents to shine. We want what you love about the industry to be reflected in how you serve your clients. And that's what we're here to support.
Yeah. So, and that's exactly what happened to me too, because when I met Parker, I wasn't trying to join his team. I was just getting information on EXP because I want to change brokerages, and he's just the EXP guy in our area. But I was solo, and after the experience I had with my first team, I really didn't want to go to a team again. And a lot of it had to do with, I did not like how all of our marketing had to be that team stuff.
Oh, sure.
We really weren't able to market ourselves at all, which I got into real estate to build a business for myself. So I went solo, and I put a good amount of money into my branding. I have my branding on everything. I've had a logo created, all that kind of stuff. So when I was talking with Parker about joining EXP, he was, he just kind of gave me some information on the team too, and the ability to market yourself while still getting the resources of a team was...
That's huge.
Yeah, it was huge. Just because, like I said, I think my business was slowing down because of all of the extra stuff I had to do in the background. And it was stopping me from doing the income producing activities. So it was just going slower. So being able to join the team and market myself was the number one thing to me.
I would say that is exactly why I came back to a team as well. From a process perspective, and maybe from a sales approach perspective, my vision for what I wanted for myself in my career didn't align with my first team. And I was really nervous about joining another team, which is why I stayed solo for so long. And I did well as a solo agent, but you are taking on all of that responsibility. And I think if you want any quality of life at all, you can only ever get your business to a certain level. You can't, if a client needs a showing on a Friday at 8 o'clock, you have to do that showing at Friday at 8 o'clock, because you don't have, an agent like yourself where I could reach out to you and say, hey, do you have the ability to do this in your schedule? You help me, I help you. Or have a showing agent who's on staff to help with that support. You're responsible for that schedule. And I just felt like my business is only ever going to go so far unless I get some of those support services where I'm not bogged down to doing those things to keep my business going, just like you.
Yeah.
And the team had all that infrastructure in place. And I love that they were open-minded. Parker's very open-minded when it comes to how do we do things better. And there's this growth mindset here that just really fit with me. I never felt like I would reach a point where my business was stagnant on this team. It's always, how can we help you support the growth of your business. And that's what we get here.
Yeah, which I think is great. And I don't want it to be taken as like I'm bashing my first team, because I think my first team was really crucial for me learning wise, because
Absolutely.
It was a smaller team, and whereas like it was like 15 or so agents. Now what we have
like 90. Yeah.
So it was very structured, but it was more like I had moved into a 9 to 5 where it's like we had required office hours.
Yep.
We had a lot of mandatory meetings and stuff like that, which I think for me, it was really good to teach me it helped me refine my time management skills. I learned a lot, because it's like you're in the office with other agents all the time.
Yep.
And so a lot of those conversations are focused around work. And I think that kind of really accelerated my learning in the first year. But at some point, like I said, it was just like I wasn't able to market myself, and I felt like all of that required time was taken away from my income producing time.
Yep.
And so I needed to get out there. And I think, so then being solo really helped me like explore that when I really had full control of my schedule and my branding and everything. So it was two very different experiences, but I think both of them really helped get me where I am now. And now with Parker's team, being able to use all the stuff that I was learning as a solo agent, but leveraging the staff is like my biggest thing.
Yeah, I would actually say we have very similar experiences, because I don't look back on the team that I started with any kind of bad feelings at all. To me, it was a dynamite real estate education, very similar in the sense that, there were mandatory meetings that we had on Monday and goal reviews, et cetera. And that's not a bad thing at all. It definitely, I was producing very well, and it taught me so much, and it gave me consistency in real estate. But I also think that environment doesn't work for every person, for every salesperson. And sometimes, there are people who are more transaction minded again versus more service minded. And I just really wanted the flexibility to kind of decide my own schedule, to do my own branding, and at the same time, be able to focus on the relationship I build with my clients versus just having to hit certain transaction numbers.
That's a huge part of Teams for Solo too, is if you are thinking about getting into a career in real estate, is make sure you're doing the research and talking to the right people on multiple teams, I think, before you pick one. So like what the structure is going to be, expected office hours, what are your leads going to be, what are your splits on your commissions going to be, what do they expect from you? Because, there are so many different teams out there. The structures are all different. You could be on a team of like 3 people. You could be on a team of like 200 people. So
right.
There are different teams out there. And another thing is, like I said, I was grateful for my first team. That was the only one I talked to.
Oh, okay. Sure. Yep.
And like getting into it, and they were a very high producing team. So I didn't even have my license yet when I first started talking to them. So I like felt flattered that they wanted me on their team before I even got my license.
Yep.
It was still a really good learning experience. I'm glad that I did it. Another good takeaway from our team is we have very good leadership. And I know now you're kind of part of the leadership team. As we've grown, you need to add more leaders to kind of delegate that kind of stuff. So how has that gone, you think, in your eyes, like just kind of that new leadership role for you?
Sure. So I feel like being a pod leader is really like, it's the natural evolution of a large team, right? Because you have to, if you're going to have a team and you want that team to grow, you have to be able to service the needs of the agents. Just like any corporate structure, as you get bigger, you need to add more managers. You have department heads, management, supervisors, et cetera. And so, just with my experience in real estate, I'm 7 years in. I have my broker's license. I have had so many unique experiences with sales and transactions that have taught me so much in the process of all of that. I'm in a position to share that to help other agents grow their business. And so being a pod leader, it's I enjoy helping other people and watching their business grow. And that's the view that I have of it. It's never, I'm your boss, I get to be the head of something. It's really, I'm just the next level of support. So you have a direct person to go to, contract structuring, if you've got a situation that comes up with one of your clients, and service is always top of mind, how do we make sure that we're representing the best interests of our clients at all time and really providing that 5-star service that's going to get them to realize we're the best person in the the industry for them to work with.
Yep.
We see this more than just a paycheck, right? Like we want them to be happy with the home that they purchase. So being in this position now as a pod leader, I'm able to, touch base with those people who need help on a daily basis, but are, they're growing their own individual brand. They're just getting an additional level of support with the team.
Which kind of brings me to the next point. A great thing about being on a team is just agent collaboration.
Yep.
Because that was another thing is I was getting a little, as a solo agent, I had an office at a Keller Williams, and I would go to my office and it was just like me in an office all day. I'm a huge people person, and I like mixing it up with people. I mean, that's a big reason I do this now.
Right.
This
is a perfect example of agent collaboration.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's been huge. I mean, I've had multiple members of our team on here, and I'm trying to open it up a little more, anyone real estate adjacent even, but it's been a great thing for me to learn from other agents because we all have different perspectives. And like I said, it was just kind of getting a little lonely in my office by myself.
Sure.
And it is good, I think, for your professional well-being to have people to bounce ideas off of.
I agree with that. Absolutely. Because the second that you say, I'm done learning, you become complacent in your business and there's nowhere to grow from there.
Well, our industry is changing all the time.
Constantly changing. Yeah. And another feature that I like of our structure and kind of that pod structure is that it's not a one-man show. We don't have one person where every agent is required to do everything the same exact way. We have varying personalities. We have different, things happening in our lives. Some people have children, some people don't. Some are married, some are not. Some are older, some are younger. And so there's always that variance in our circumstances and the type of people we are. Mm-hmm. The more that we collaborate, we're going to learn from different styles and approaches that resonate with us, that will work better with how we serve our clients versus always being told this is the only way to do something. So I love agent collaboration for that reason.
Yeah. And like I said, I think it benefits the client because
100%.
When you get a new listing, I usually will, run my own CMA. And at this point, I'm pretty solid at CMAs, but I always like to get a second opinion because it's to have an agent look at it and say, hey, what would you think of this price? And then you can kind of talk about like, why is it this? Why is it not that? Or if you get a good match, it's like, okay, then we're both thinking the same thing. Or if you've got an interesting offer type situation, you can talk with agents because, there's always different ways to mix up offers and make them more attractive. And some people have ideas that you didn't have.
Right.
Because, again, it's changing all the time.
And on a team like ours, the likelihood that there's an agent who's been through something similar is higher. Much higher than maybe on a smaller team or definitely when you're working by yourself. I remember as a solo agent, I came from I really do like the broker that I came from, the owner of the RE/MAX Advantage Plus that I came from. He was great. But again, you just kind of feel like, okay, I'm by myself. I don't really know who to go to for some of these questions or situations that came up. And that's how a lot of my learning came about, but it would have been a much easier, faster process had I been in kind of a collaborative environment like we have, which is why I really like the pod system. And then I also like how, some of the different types of training that we have and the agent mastermind that we started, where that whole training session is really designed just to give voice to the agents so we can collaborate with each other.
Thanks for watching part 1 of being a solo agent versus being on a team. As always, remember to like and subscribe, and then next week join us for part 2.